And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
When I first came to Korea 9 years ago, I was looking for games to play with my wife, because that's all I had at the time while we had a little baby. Little did I know I'm going to be able to play 8-player games at some point. But anyway, I looked for 2-player games, and there was the Cosmos 2-player game series, and Rio Grande prints these games, but I'm always looking for other 2-player games. And so here we got one that's called Pick and Pack, which has players controlling a machinery that goes through and picks up different pieces or different fruits and puts them in their on their side. It brings to mind those machines where you move the levers and try and get the stuffed animals. Those machines which steal all your money, and you still can't get the stuffed animal. And let's look at this game. Here we see the setup of the game. It's basically a grid, and on this grid you're putting different apple tiles, and these tiles are randomly placed on the board, and they show from 1 apple all the way up to there's 1 tile with 6 apples on it, and this token is placed in the 6th apple tile, wherever it is. That token represents the claw that's coming down and scooping up the apples and pulling them out. Now, on a player's turn, you're going to look, and each player controls the direction of this claw. For example, the red player here controls it, and they can move it this direction, and the blue player controls it, moving it in this direction. And so both players control it partially, but they have to work together, although they're really trying to get it for themselves. So on your turn, let's say it's Blue's turn, he can move it anywhere he wants, so he'll move it here and take this 5 apple, and he will then place this in one of his 4 empty crates over here. Then Red goes, and Red moves it over here and picks up the 4 apple, placing it in one of their empty crates. And this continues as the game goes by, and players are picking up. Usually, players are going to go to where they can get the most apples, and as they're placing these, they have to put them in empty crates, but if all the crates have apples in, they can put it in another one. If a player moves to an empty spot, they don't get to take an apple, but they can only do so if they have one of their tiles at the end. Players are placing tiles on either side. They do that at the beginning of the game, and tiles will do different actions. So if they land on empty space, they can take one of those tiles and do whatever that action says. Now, there are 2 tiles that are probably the most important ones, I think, and that are these 2 tiles here, Quality Control and Wholesale. Wholesale you place on top of a stack of opponent's apples. It basically shuts that stack down and makes it score less at the end of the game. Quality Control you'll place on the top of one of your apples. Not Quality Control. Premium you'll place on top of one of your apples, and that will make those worth more points at the end of the game. So Premium you place on your own, and Wholesale you place on the other players. Quality Control lets you flip the action tile face down, and you can steal one of these from your opponent and put it into one of your crates. Then there's some that let you mix up crates, or some that let you destroy another player's action. Rush Order lets you take 2 turns in a row in the future. But basically, the game is going to end when either one person has their whole thing filled up with 2 premiums and 2 wholesales. At that point, the game ends, or if there's no legal move to move this, because it cannot go to an empty spot if there are no tiles on either side. So eventually, players may run out of where they can move the claw to. At that point, each pile that has nothing on top of it, the apples are 1 point each. If they're premium, then apples are worth 2 points each. And if they're wholesale, then every 2 apples gives you 1 point. There's some interesting concepts here. There's the concept of moving the claw around to pick up the apples, but when you think, okay, I moved the claw there to get 4 apples, but I'm setting him up to take that 6 apple tile. Or if I move it here, I'm only going to get 3 apples, but then he can get nothing good. Or you're watching your move plus where your opponent might move. Going farther than that, thinking more moves in the future doesn't seem very feasible. Knowing when to put these tiles down. If I put the premium tile down in a stack of apples now, I double all the points in it, but I could get some more apples there. But if I wait, my opponent might throw that wholesale one there. And, and so there's a little bit of tension in the game. But when it comes down to it, Pick and Pack, while it's fun, while it's interesting and entertaining, it's fairly light on the strategy and thought. It's just a game that you just kind of play. And oh look, you won. I don't think anyone would say I'm a consistent pick and pack player winner. I don't know that that's possible. I'm sure, I mean, obviously there's enough strategy where you can beat someone who's better than you, but the lack of really being able to look multiple moves in the future is going to hurt this game, at least strategy-wise. But hey, it's 20 minutes. It's 8 and up. I can play it with my daughter. I can play it with my wife. They both enjoy the light feeling of it, and the theme is a pretty neat one too. It just, I think, be neater if you actually had a machine where you're able to move it and see the claw come down. That'd probably cost an extra $80, but wouldn't that be more fun? Well, anyway, it's a fun little light game, but fairly fluffy.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.